Um, I am Cristina Mata Yandiola, as introduced. I am leading the European division of Powerledger. And we're a company utilizing blockchain to improve energy markets in different ways, which I'll explain in a bit, but I'd like to start with a question that is becoming more and more relevant now with the energy crisis, which is why cannot we deploy so many renewables in order not to be so dependent on gas and in order to make prices cheaper and the system cleaner? And the answer is mainly our electricity grid was not made for this sort of solutions. And if we see, for example, the graph that you can see on the screen, we would expect that those countries that have managed to deploy more renewables would be the ones that would have cheaper electricity prices. In contrast, if you look at, for example, Germany or Denmark, which are some of the countries with the highest renewable capacity installed in their countries, they have the highest electricity costs on an average nowadays in the European market. And this is because it costs a lot of money to the electricity networks to maintain so many renewables on the grid, mainly for two reasons. On one hand, there's a time variability problem. Normally, traditionally, we set a balance between the demand and the generation of electricity from energy in order we've kept it with rotational machines, which were carbon plants, gas plants, those that are run with turbines. And the good thing of those is that we can choose when to produce. When we have a high amount of wind and solar energy in the system, which is what we call variable renewable energies, we cannot choose when these are available. The sun is shining during the day and the wind is just present whenever it is present. We cannot choose. And this makes it a challenge to balance demand and consumption of the grid. And we need that in order to keep the frequency of the electricity grid stable and in order to ensure that all components remain in good shape. Therefore, when there's like an excess in demand, but not enough generation or the other way around, we need to shut down, for example, wind power plants, which is what we call curtailment, or we need to provide those consumers with more electricity from gas or coal, or utilize storage. The issue related to this as well is that many times the demand that we have is there when there is no sun. For example, the highest peaks in demand occur in the evenings, and not everyone has the capacity to purchase storage with the current conditions. So the goal, in order to find a solution, is try to promote that more renewable electricity is produced closer to the consumption, installing distributed energy resources. So installing solar capacity and wind capacity when possible at the last mile of the grid, so to say, where it's closer and locally matched with the corresponding demand. And also try to promote actually the consumption of electricity via price signals or the utilization of storage in order to move part of this capacity in the evening towards other moments of the day where there's more renewable electricity generation coming into the system. Now, the other issue that we have with these variable renewable energies is the location problem. They are normally present in specific areas where there's like either a high solar intensity or a high wind speed, and wind is blowing many hours a year. The problem with this is as well, the grid is limited. We only have specific grid lines. So for example, if we look at countries like Germany, we are experiencing grid congestion, which means the grid doesn't have the capacity to transfer the energy that is generated in specific areas. For example, a lot of times in the north of Germany, because of the high amount of wind energy installed, the grid cannot transfer it to the southern areas of the grid because there's a lot of energy coming into the system, more than the grid capacity can allow for. This is again a problem because the grid was planned for coal plants that we could fire and start whenever we needed them and wherever we needed them, and not in such a variable way that we can do it now. Results of this is a lot of wind power plants, for example, being curtailed, so their production being shut down at specific hours when there's too much generation, and that's costing grid operators about €1 billion yearly in Germany, 1.3 in the UK. So a lot of money being put into compensating and balancing these grid mechanisms. Again, the solution is trying to bring the generation closer to the consumption and trying to promote local energy matching. Now, how does blockchain help us in this area? So if we think about the traditional energy system, they were like very large coal plants, for example, or thermal plants generating electricity at specific points of the grid. And that electricity was transferred in big quantities at first, and then smaller volumes of energy in the end mile of the grid in the more local areas. And it was always transferred in a centralized manner, we call it. So from these big power plants towards the little end consumers. The market model that we're shifting towards relies on having more generation, scaling up renewables by generating on the end mile. What happens then is that it's not that much volume that is traded in the end mile, but there's a lot of transactions happening on the end mile. A lot of small contracts happening from prosumers to consumers, from people generating solar to others consuming it. And all of that needs a data management system that supports. We first of all need asset identification to generate trust between producers and consumers. We need a way for having financial settlement that is quick and reliable. We need a way for billing relying on this sort of quick financial settlement. And we need a way for generating customer engagement and trust. And then most importantly, we need a system that is scalable and can track and record all of the transactions taking place in the system, which in many cases are microtransactions, just a couple of kilowatt hours. It might be less than €1 or £1. And so it's a lot of information recorded for transactions that are very little, which with a traditional data management system would cost a lot of money. So what Powerledger provides is marketplaces that allow this sort of energy trading, that allow to trace energy more transparently, to trade energy with nearly instantaneous financial settlement, and also recording all transactions on a blockchain, and also to improve the way we trade as well energy certificates. We do utilize blockchain for improving the security of this trading, but also for enabling, for example, smart contracts to automate some of these transactions, to trigger certain payments when it's needed, and have a near instantaneous financial settlement. And we do this in 3 different fields, as I said, enabling peer-to-peer trading, so trading between prosumers and consumers at the local level, also sending price signals and improving offers for grid flexibility to the grid operators, which we enable and automate via smart contracts, and also for providing more transparency on the traceability of energy, who generated it, what source of energy, tracking and tracing every kilowatt hour down to its source, and also providing marketplaces to trade energy certificates and PPA, and so power purchase agreements of energy in a smarter manner. The way this improves the energy market, of course, like it allows consumers to be able to afford energy, to trade with each other seamlessly, to monetize the excess solar they might have during the day because they might not need it, and therefore to also be able to afford more often energy technologies and also storage technologies, because they can make a profit out of it and get a much quicker revenue for their investment. And we also utilize artificial intelligence and automated demand response via smart contracts in order to make these tradings automatic. So they also can be, for example, price signals can be sent by grid operators in order to trigger a certain reaction in a local energy market. For example, if we would have those cases of grid congestion and where that capacity cannot be transported on the grid, trigger actually, and for example, consumption response at that moment in the grid. Now, how does blockchain help us in all of those spaces that I mentioned? It provides us with time and location stamping for each kilowatt hour. So we know what was generated when it was traded to whom, and so on and so forth, and where was it generated. So it allows us to send the right market signals associated to the time and location when energy is generated and consumed. It also enhances transparency, providing secure traceability and verification of where what was produced and consumed. And it gives us a cost-efficient and scalable data management system that can afford recording all of these transactions, for small that they are, into a system that can be accessed anytime and traced securely. It also provides us automation capabilities through smart contracts. It let us automate complex transactions in multiplayer markets, for example, these peer-to-peer transactions or automated demand response. And it also allows us to have instantaneous financial settlements, and it enhances data security and, of course, trust in multiplayer markets, transparency in transactions, which also improves auditing of these systems, and overall giving more security to the energy markets. And we operate on a Solana-based blockchain. We transitioned to these from an Ethereum blockchain because it's much quicker and scalable. It allows us to have 50,000 transactions per second compared to the 10 to 15 transactions per second Ethereum allows. And most importantly, we are at 0.0003%. We consume 0.0003% of the energy that an equivalent Ethereum blockchain would consume, which means that we are like about 3,000 times cleaner than the equivalent Ethereum blockchain. Our Power token is still on the ERC20 blockchain because of the benefits and security of ERC20, but the blockchain and these transactions and this automation operates in a Solana-based blockchain. Just to give you a bit of an insight of what can be achieved with this, of course, driving more installation of solar and wind at the end miles of the system, so scaling up renewables in the system in a way that is achievable. Also involving the consumer, the end consumer, into that energy transition, allowing them to afford these sort of energy systems and storage. So it's a way of also empowering the population in order to take part in the energy transition at the same time as they save money. And also it allows to bring benefits to the grid operators. As we were saying, we've seen results from this sort of automation and energy trading that have led to reducing peaks in evening demand, for example, by 44%, in Germany, other cases by 28%, in Australia, for example. And we've also seen midday export peak reductions of around 30%, which means trying to have people store that energy or consume it while they are producing it instead of feeding it back to the grid all at the same time. If you would like to read more about this, we have a very good white paper on the Powerledger website, which you can access, or you can email me to learn more about it. And you also have plenty of information on the website. And if you want to learn more about Powerledger, just a quick introduction, we're a company that has been present for 6 years in the market. And as introduced, we developed the world's first energy trading platform that was based on blockchain 6 years ago. And in the meantime, we've expanded to 14 countries in every continent on the globe. With many, like 30 plus strategic partners with whom we're doing projects in those different spaces I've commented. These are the different countries where we are. We have offices in Berlin, London, Perth, Washington, D.C., and San Francisco. And so if there's interest, feel free to reach out to learn more about how we use this technology. And you can also see us through different associations like Euroelectric, Smart Energy Europe, Energy Tag, Global Blockchain Business Council, and so on, where we contribute with these different projects in order to bring these learnings onto the market and help other companies also benefit from this sort of solutions. That's all on my end. If there's any questions, I'm looking forward to hearing them later. And thank you very much for listening.